The backyard shimmered under strings of white lights, woven through cedar trees like the fireflies my grandmother caught in mason jars. Long wooden tables, draped in checkered cloth soft from years of family dinners, held vases of wildflowers that recalled her Sunday suppers, Patsy Cline's voice crackling on the radio. My sister Veronica's farmhouse, just outside Austin, was polished yet warm, its porch swing creaking like the one we shared as kids. Her twin daughters were turning 8, and the neighborhood had gathered, their laughter mingling with the smoky scent of barbecue. Sophie and I arrived as the chocolate cake was sliced, its buttercream swirls glowing in the evening light. My 7-year-old daughter clung to my hand, her sparkly blue headband glinting like a star. She'd practiced Happy Birthday all the way here, her voice trembling with courage. In her other hand, she held 2 homemade cards, bursting with rainbows and wobbly hearts, tucked into envelopes adorned with star stickers. For Sophie, this party was a quiet act of bravery, a chance to shine in a crowd that often dimmed her light. As we stepped into the yard, I felt the familiar ache of being a stranger in my own family. Neighbors and cousins offered fleeting smiles, their eyes sliding past me. My mother's smile was tight, a silent plea to keep things smooth. My father, hunched over his plate of ribs, didn't look up, the clink of his fork louder than any welcome. Veronica stood at the center, her laughter sharp, an iced tea in her hand. When our eyes met, she gave a quick nod, then turned away, as if I were a guest who'd arrived too late. I swallowed the hurt, whispering to myself that this was for Sophie. Then came the gift bags. Veronica called the children forward, each receiving a shiny tote sparkling with their name in glitter. Inside were treasures that made them gasp: plush toys, beaded bracelets, fancy chocolates, monogrammed water bottles. The air buzzed with joy, like the Christmases I'd dreamed of as a child, gathered around our old black-and-white TV. "Sophie Mitchell," Veronica called. A woman I didn't know handed Sophie a crumpled white paper bag. No glitter, no name. Just a yellow sticky note, stuck crookedly, with 3 words in black marker. "Try harder next time." My heart froze. Sophie traced the words, her small brow furrowing. Her smile wavered, but she held it, fragile and brave. She opened the bag slowly, her eyes still bright with hope. Inside, a broken pencil, a faded mint, a worn gray eraser. Nothing else. I knelt beside her, my chest tight with grief. Sophie's brown eyes blinked back tears, but she didn't cry. She whispered, "Did I do something wrong, Mommy?" Before I could speak, Veronica's laugh sliced through, cold and mocking. "She's been a bit dramatic," she said, as if it were a shared joke. Just a nudge to toughen her up. My mother nodded, her voice light. "She'll be fine, Lauren. You're too soft with her." My father kept eating, his fork scraping the plate. Sophie's face crumpled, a quiet heartbreak that shattered me. In that moment, I was no longer a sister or a daughter. I was a mother, and my child had been wounded by the people who should have loved her most. Jason stepped forward, his presence steady as the oak in our yard. He took the bag from Sophie's trembling hands and said, "Come on, sweetheart. Let's get ice cream, your choice of flavor." His voice was calm, but his eyes held a fire that warmed my heart. As we turned to leave, Sophie paused and slipped her cards onto the table, her small act of kindness piercing me. Even now, she gave. We walked away, the lights fading behind us, and no one called after us. Not even Veronica looked back. In the silence, I knew this was the moment everything changed. The drive home was cloaked in a silence heavier than the Texas dusk. Sophie sat in the back, her sparkly headband crooked, staring at the paper bag in her lap, the sticky note glaring like an accusation. Jason gripped the steering wheel, his jaw tight, each breath a struggle to contain his anger. I sat in the front, my heart torn between fury and a sorrow so deep it felt like drowning. The checkered cloths, the wildflowers, the laughter, it all felt like a faded Polaroid, a family that existed only in my longing. I'd spent years trying to belong, to be seen, to be loved. And now they were turning that coldness on my daughter, her small heart bearing the weight of their indifference. Sophie's voice broke the quiet, soft as a falling leaf. Was it because I didn't say, "Thank you"? I turned, my throat so tight I could barely breathe. "No, sweetheart," I said, my voice cracking. "You did nothing wrong. You are perfect, just as you are." She hugged the bag closer, the sticky note crinkling. "But my cards," she whispered. "The rainbows weren't straight. Maybe they didn't like them." Her words cut deeper than the note. I saw myself at 8, clutching a drawing of a sunflower, its petals uneven but bright. I'd shown it to my mother, hoping for a smile. She was ironing my father's church shirt, the steam hissing. "Veronica's the one with talent," she said, not looking up. "That's just making a mess." I'd torn the drawing in half, my heart torn with it. Now, watching Sophie clutch her smudged cards, their rainbows blurred by her small, sweaty hands, I felt that old wound reopen, a hurt passed down, generation to generation. I reached back, smoothing her hair. "Your cards were the heart of that party," I said, tears burning my eyes. "They came from you, and that makes them perfect." Jason's voice was low, steady. "You're braver than anyone there, Sophie. Don't ever forget that." When we got home, Sophie curled up on the couch, pulling my mother's old patchwork quilt over her shoulders, its blues and yellows a reminder of a love that didn't demand perfection. The plastic-covered couch creaked beneath us, like the one in my childhood living room, where I'd watch Bonanza reruns, hoping for a kind word. I sat beside her, the sticky note now on the coffee table, its words a silent taunt. Out of nowhere, Sophie said, "Mrs. Ellis says when people are mean, it's because they're sad inside." Mrs. Ellis, her art teacher, was a woman in her 70s, her eyes crinkled from years of smiles despite her losses. Sophie's words stunned me, her empathy a light in my darkness, and I felt a swell of pride mixed with aching sorrow. "Was it because I cried at the last party?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "No, baby," I said, my heart breaking. "Some people forget how to be kind. That's their mistake, not yours." She nodded, her eyes heavy with a question she didn't voice. If I'd been better, would they have loved me? I pulled her close, her small body warm against mine, as if I could shield her from every cruel word. Jason poured tea, refilling my mug when it cooled, his hand rubbing the spot between my shoulders, a quiet anchor in my storm. As Sophie drifted to sleep, her breathing soft, he sat across from me and said, "This wasn't about a bag, Lauren." "I know," I whispered, tears falling. "How many times have we let this happen?" he asked, his voice gentle but piercing. "Too many. The Christmas my mother called my pecan pie too sweet. The time Veronica laughed at Sophie's thrift store dress, saying it looked like a hand-me-down. The time my father told Sophie to stop crying or you'll grow up weak. I'd thought enduring it would protect her, that my silence would keep the peace. But I was wrong. That night, I took the sticky note and taped it to the bathroom mirror, its words staring back at me. "This ends with me, not just for Sophie, but for the women before me, who learned silence was safety." After Sophie fell asleep, her card still in her hands, I sat by her bed, the nightlight casting pale stars on the ceiling. In the stillness, memories rose like ghosts, each one heavy with a longing I'd tried to bury. I was 8 when I won a school award for helping a classmate with math. I ran home, the certificate crinkled in my hands, sure my parents would pin it to the fridge beside Veronica's honor roll ribbons. My mother was watching her soap opera on our black and white TV, the screen flickering. She glanced at the paper and said, "Veronica got Student of the Month, twice already. Nice try, though." Then she turned away, leaving me to tuck the certificate into a drawer, where it yellowed alongside my pride. At 10, I discovered sketching, wildflowers, clouds, messy lines that made my heart sing. I showed my father my sketchbook, hoping for a smile. He was polishing his Chevrolet Impala, the radio humming Johnny Cash. He frowned. "Art's a hobby, not a life. Look at your sister, she's practical." So I hid my drawings under my bed, where they gathered dust until I forgot how to love them. But there was one person who saw me. Mrs. Carter, our elderly neighbor, who'd sit on her porch with a glass of lemonade, her apron stained from canning green beans. One summer evening, she handed me a small sketchpad, her hands trembling from age. "Don't let anyone steal your colors, Lauren," she said, her voice soft but sure. I'd forgotten those words until now, but they echoed in my heart, a whisper of the girl I'd been. I'd spent my childhood chasing love I thought I had to earn. I wore stiff-collared church dresses because Veronica looks so proper in hers. I gave up my favorite cereal because Veronica likes it better. I learned to be quiet, to shrink, to avoid being too much. Every time I spoke up, I heard, "Don't be difficult," or "You're too emotional." So I stopped asking for attention, stopped expecting kindness, until I was a shadow of myself. I used to think my silence would make things easier, because that's what my mother did, her lips pressed tight when my grandmother's sharp words cut deep. But silence doesn't heal. It buries. Now I saw that shadow in Sophie, clutching her cards the way I'd clutched that torn sunflower drawing. The way she scanned a room before speaking. The way she forced a smile when her heart was breaking. The way she asked, "Did I do something wrong?" It was me all over again, and the realization was a wound that bled anew. Jason came in, holding a mug of chamomile tea, his eyes soft with concern. "You okay?" he asked, sitting beside me. "I thought I was the problem," I whispered, tears spilling. "That if I was less sensitive, they'd love me. My mother thought the same, and her mother before her." He took my hand, his touch grounding me. "They didn't want to see you, because then they'd have to face themselves." I looked at Sophie, her small chest rising and falling. "She'll start believing it's her fault, too," I said, my voice breaking. "Not if we stop it," he said, his words a quiet vow. That night, I opened an old box in my closet, where I'd kept Mrs. Carter's sketchpad, its pages still blank. I took a pencil and drew a single flower, its petals uneven but alive. Tears fell as I drew, not from sadness, but from reclaiming a piece of myself. I took the sticky note from the mirror and wrote beneath it, "That's enough." The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, the sticky note now taped to my notebook, its words a silent challenge. I began sorting through years of unspoken hurts, printing receipts for bills I'd paid for my parents when they forgot, saving screenshots of Veronica's texts asking for loans she never repaid, jotting down moments like the time my mother missed Sophie's school play because something came up. Each piece was a brick in a wall I'd built to protect my heart, and now I was laying them out, creating a folder of truth to face what I'd long ignored. Jason stood in the doorway, his eyes steady. "We're doing this," he said, his voice a quiet confirmation. "Yes," I whispered. "We're not going back." For years, I'd thought if I loved them harder, they'd come around. I forgave sharp comments, overlooked missed birthdays, brushed off the tears Sophie cried in silence. I gave them every chance, hoping they'd see us. But that day, I knew. Grace without boundaries isn't love. It's abandonment. That afternoon, I drove to Veronica's house, the farmhouse glowing in the late sunlight. I didn't knock. I didn't want to hear her laugh or see her dismiss me. Instead, I left a letter on her doorstep, addressed to her and my parents. It was simple, written in the quiet of the night. Asterisk, I've tried to be the daughter, the sister you wanted. But I'm choosing Sophie now. I'm choosing peace. Please respect our space. Asterisk. As I walked back to the car, I glanced at the geraniums I'd given Veronica years ago, their red blooms bright against the dusk. They were still thriving, and I felt a flicker of hope that life could grow even in hard places. That night, the storm hit. My phone buzzed with Veronica's texts. Asterisk, you're tearing our family apart over a stupid bag? How selfish can you be? Asterisk, my mother's voicemail was tearful, manipulative. Lauren, you're breaking my heart. I didn't raise you to abandon us. Sophie needs her grandparents. Veronica posted on Facebook, her words veiled but vicious. Some people would rather play victim than face their own flaws. Comments poured in, some tagging me, others calling me dramatic or ungrateful. Each message was a blow, tugging at the girl who'd begged for their love. But then came a text from Aunt Clara, my mother's older sister, who'd been silent for years. Asterisk, thank you for speaking up. I wish I'd done the same when I was your age. Asterisk, her words were a lifeline, a validation I hadn't expected, and I cried quietly, grateful for her courage. I shared the letter with a few relatives who'd wondered why I'd grown distant. Some responded with silence, others with judgment, but a few, like Clara, offered quiet support, their words like lanterns in the dark. A week later, my mother appeared at our door, holding a card with gold trim. Family is forever, it read. Don't let small things break us. Her eyes were puffy, but I saw the blame beneath her tears. I didn't open the door. Instead, I took the sticky note from my notebook, gatched a line through "try harder next time," and wrote, "She doesn't have to." I slipped it into the card and placed it back in the mailbox, my hand steady, my heart aching but resolute. That night, Jason stayed up with me, pouring tea, refilling my mug when it cooled, his hand rubbing the spot between my shoulders. He didn't say much, but his presence was enough, a reminder that I wasn't alone. The days after the letter felt like stepping into a new season, unfamiliar, but alive with possibility. My phone buzzed with messages, some angry, some pleading, but I let them fade like distant thunder. The folder of truth sat on my desk, a testament to my resolve, each receipt and note a step toward freedom. One afternoon, a package arrived from Mrs. Ellis, Sophie's art teacher. Inside was a small watercolor set and a note for Sophie, who paints the world brighter. Sophie had told her about the party, and Mrs. Ellis, with her gentle wisdom, wanted to remind her she was enough. I held the note, tears welling, grateful for this quiet act of love. I stood at the kitchen sink, washing dishes, when a memory hit me. I was 12, sitting on our old patio, the plastic tablecloth sticky under my elbows. Veronica showed off a spelling bee ribbon. My mother clapped, my father grilled burgers, and I sat there, holding a flyer for a city art contest I'd been selected for. I waited all evening for a chance to share it, but the moment never came. By dessert, I'd folded it into my pocket, telling myself it didn't matter. That was the day I began to believe my worth depended on their approval. Now, I watched Sophie outside, drawing with chalk on the driveway, spirals, stars, a messy galaxy shimmering in the sunlight. I stepped out and knelt beside her. "What's this one?" I asked, my voice soft. "A home," she said, her eyes bright. "Not ours, but one I made up." "Who lives there?" I asked. She pointed to 3 stick figures under a wide, blue sky. "You, me, and Daddy Jason. There's a garden for painting, and a big sky where I can be free." I smiled, my heart swelling. "It's perfect." Her laugh rang out, clear and unguarded, and I felt a warmth I'd been missing my whole life. This was her safe house, a place where she could shine without fear, a home I was building for her, brick by brick. Jason and I continued untangling the ties we'd kept with my family, phone bills we'd paid, tutoring fees for Veronica's daughters we'd covered, without thanks. Each one we released was a thread loosened, a weight lifted, until our home felt truly ours. By the end of the week, we were free, not just from payments, but from the guilt that had bound us to a love that burned. Jason sat with me one evening, his hand on mine, and said, "We're building something better." His words were a promise, and I believed them. The house was still now, but not empty. There were no calls from my mother, no texts from Veronica, no expectations pressing against our walls. Just the hum of the fish tank, the rustle of paper lanterns in Sophie's room, and her giggles as she painted with glitter glue, her fingers sparkling like tiny constellations. Sophie was unfolding, like a flower touched by sunlight. Her laughter came freely, her voice no longer hushed by fear. One evening, she came home from art class with a painting, blues and greens woven with golden arcs like tiny suns, a house under a boundless sky. "It's my safe house," she said, her voice proud. "Where I can be me, with you and Daddy Jason, and a sky that's always free." Her words were a gift, a sign she was unlearning the silence I'd carried, the silence my mother carried before me. I hung the painting in the living room, above the couch, its colors a daily reminder of the life we were building. One night, I sat in the office, staring at the sticky note on my desk, now crossed out with "She doesn't have to" in bold red ink. The folder of truth lay beside it, a monument to my resolve. I picked up a pen and added to the note, "We are enough." Jason walked in with tea, his eyes warm. "You look lighter," he said, and I realized he was right. Not weightless, but unburdened, as if I'd set down a load carried by generations. The next day, Sophie's school invited her to speak at Family Day, reading a piece about home. She chose me to sit beside her, her small hand in mine. Her piece was short but piercing. "Home is where I'm loved and trusted. My mom is my home, and that's where I feel safe." I cried, not from pain, but from a gratitude so deep it felt like prayer. That night, Sophie looked up from her coloring and asked, "What if Aunt Veronica calls again?" I smiled, my heart steady. I wouldn't be angry, but I wouldn't answer. Sometimes the strongest thing we can do is live well and let go. She nodded, her eyes bright. I want to live well, too. In that moment, with the smell of crayons in the air and Jason washing dishes in the kitchen, I knew this was the life I was meant to build. Not perfect, but true. A home where Sophie could grow without the shadows of my past, or my mother's, or her mother's before her. Some nights, when the house is quiet and Sophie's asleep, I sit by the window, the hum of the fridge and the creak of the walls my only company. I ask myself the question I know others ask, too. Did I do the right thing? Cutting ties with family is a grief, a silent mourning for the love I waited for, the apologies that never came. It's letting go of the girl who thought if she was quieter, smaller, better, they'd choose her. It's a wound that aches in the dark, a longing for a family that only existed in my dreams, around a table with canned green beans and laughter, not just the clatter of forks. But I did it. Not out of anger, but for Sophie, because I couldn't let her grow up believing love was a prize to be earned. I couldn't let her carry the silence that bound my mother, her mother, and me. The silence that began long before that crumpled bag, with its sticky note demanding she try harder. Since that day, life has changed. It's not easy. I still dream of a dinner where my mother pulls me aside and says she's sorry, where Veronica laughs with me, not at me. I wake with a pang, forgetting for a moment that those scenes aren't real. But then I hear Sophie's voice, calling from down the hall, her laughter bright and unapologetic. And I know I chose right. Last Sunday, we baked chocolate chip cookies, my grandmother's recipe, the kitchen warm with a scent of butter and sugar. Sophie got flour on her nose and laughed so hard she snorted, her joy a melody I'd trade any family reunion for. Jason joined us, sneaking a cookie before they cooled, his grin a reminder of the life we've built together. A week ago, I found a letter in the mailbox, not from my mother, but from Mrs. Carter's daughter, who I hadn't seen since I was a child. She'd heard about our story through Aunt Clara and wrote, "My mother always said you had a spark. Thank you for passing it to your daughter." Enclosed was a photo of me at 10, drawing on Mrs. Carter's porch, my smile wide and fearless. I hadn't known that photo existed, and it felt like a gift from the past, a reminder of the girl who still lived in me. Maybe you, too, once sat at a quiet dinner table, hearing more clatter of forks than words of affection. Maybe you learned, like I did, that being good meant being quiet. Maybe you carried that silence, thinking it was love, just as your parents did, and theirs before them. But maybe it's not too late to unlearn that. If you've carried pain like mine, try this. Write a letter to your child, to your younger self, to no one at all. Pour out the words you never said, the hurts you buried. Or plant a flower in your garden, something small that blooms despite the odds. Or sit beside someone you love and let silence speak something softer than hurt. That too is healing. And if you're wondering, as I have, whether to stay or walk away, ask yourself, If it were your child, your heart, your light, would you stay? I don't have all the answers. But I have Sophie, a girl who paints galaxies, laughs freely, and knows she's enough. And that's enough to know I chose right.